What is up, YouTube? And today we're going to be talking about which Moonlight 5 stars I personally think need a buff. Now, I do have a pretty good selection of Moonlight 5 stars on my account. I don't have all of them, but I have all the pretty good ones. And there's going to be some that I'm missing that are good and some that I'm missing that are bad. And I'm just making this video because I kind of want Smilegate to actually realize that they need to buff these 5 units that I'm about to mention because they are just unplayable or just not used anywhere. And these units, although very, very cool by design, I feel like if they get a little bit of a tweak to their kit or some buffs or exclusive equipment, they could be very good in the meta or just usable in general. Now, the first unit we're going to be talking about is Blood Moon Haste. If you guys saw my last Moonlight 5-star PvP tier list, Blood Moon Haste was in his own tier, and that's because he has one niche, and that's going to be against revive units with his S2 Grudge. Basically, when an enemy revives, he grants a barrier and immunity for 1 turn, and also reset the cooldown of his S3. Biggest problem is the barrier and immunity only lasts for 1 turn, so if you actually are in a weird turn cycle where your next unit goes right after the unit that revives, they just lose that barrier and immunity immediately, which makes him pretty bad. They should definitely make this at least 2 turns in my opinion. And honestly, when he's waiting for a unit to revive, he doesn't really do anything. He doesn't really do that much damage. He has okay damage with his S1 that also heals, or not heals, but that dispels 1 buff, which is okay. His S3 does the healing, it'll heal everyone. It does decent damage with the penetrate defense, and also make it so that allies take less damage, although Aureus will override this, so yeah, Aureus is just better. But yeah, until he actually gets a revive off, or the enemy revives, he's just sitting there, just spamming S1, not CR pushing his team at all, like other Weavers do. CR push your team. You also have units like Ocean Breeze Luca pushing their team, right? Moon Bunny Dominion now also pushing their team, providing attack buff. Blood Moon Haste just sits there, does nothing, and even when his S2 goes off, it's not even the best. And also, there's just better answers to revive, right? You have units like Briar, which is Saria, which just counters revive a lot better. And revive is just not that strong right now. There's not really any good revive units besides like Destina, I'd say, overall, and maybe like Fire Mercedes, but their revives are very weak. They revive with very low HP. Destina's S3 doesn't really do that much in terms of reviving. It just revives units, doesn't CR push them, and doesn't really heal them that much. And Mercedes revives at low HP, so yeah, it's not that great. This unit definitely needs a buff. I think improving this turn duration on his S2 would definitely be good. Giving him some healing on his S1. I know people run him on Celestine so he can heal, but they should just have it baseline, honestly. And I feel like his S3 needs another effect. Probably change this decreased damage suffered by allies, because everyone runs a knight with Aureus anyways, into something else, whether it be like a full cleanse, whether it be like a CR push or something, because I think his kit is just very, very lacking, and very sad because I really like his design. The scythe is super cool. But it's not usable at all anywhere besides like Asmonak 13 for PvE, but even then, like, there's just way better options. Next up on the list, we have Arbiter Villager, which might be a surprise because if you guys played for a long time, this unit used to be the best unit in the game, bar none, because his S3 did a ton of damage. You would revive if you die, have 100% CR, get your upgraded S3, and if you're running Alexa's Basket, you'll actually have a chance to proc this on revive as well. And if you actually proc Alexa's Basket when you revive, pretty much lights out for the enemy side. Your S3 just does a ton of damage, especially if you soul burn, and his S1 is super annoying because it does a lot of damage. CR pushes back and will hit multiple enemies, so he was very, very good in PvE, best AoE damage dealer back then, best unit at farming adventure, and back when you had to actually manually walk your fodder through adventure mode and replace them over and over, he was the best because he would S3 the first wave, reset it, S2 the second wave, reset it, S3 the last wave, and then kill the boss with the final S1. So he was very good because he had no animation on his S3 before you actually get this maxed out at 5 focus. And in PvP, he was a god because not a lot of answers to to revive. The only answer to revive was actually Blood Moon Haste at the time. Blood Moon Haste was specifically designed to counter Arbiter Villager because Arbiter Villager was that broken. And what would happen is if you kill Arbiter Villager, he would revive. Blood Moon Haste would actually give that barrier and immunity to his team, so you actually soak that entire S3 damage with Alexa's Basket, even proccing, and you don't get blinded, and you can kill him right after. But Arbiter Villager definitely fell out because, yeah, he's very squishy, even with the revive. There's a lot of revive counters. Milim is probably like the best answer to him. You even have like Blood Moon Haste, who can be used against him as well. You can even use any extinction, even like Ice Cigarette works very well against him. There's just a lot of extinction units that can deal with him very, very easily. And even if you actually don't have extinction and he revives, his S3 doesn't really do that much damage. If you don't get that greater attack buff from Alexa's Basket, you're not going to do that much damage. This is pretty weak, honestly. And even if you do get the Alexa's Basket, if you have like an air well, you're going to be eating that shit for breakfast. So it's pretty easy to actually just like not die. So this unit really needs a buff. Just needs like a damage buff, honestly. I think if he did more damage, he'd be better. And yeah, also his usage in PvE is just like not that great anymore because we have a ton of free-to-play AoE units. Spectre Scenario is just better than him, dealing damage in the late game PvE. Bomb Autocana available from connections, just does what he does, but better for PvE. She's a ranger as well, so she can hold better artifacts for PvE, like Bloodstone. And yeah, he's just not really used in dog walking anymore because you have Free Spirit Tyria, who's just as good. And also because in adventure mode now, when you're farming, or I guess unrecorded history, when you're farming AP, you don't really need to have one unit carry. You can just bring your top geared units now if you really want to, and just have them clear through because we have repeat battling. We also have penguin mileage now, so you don't really need a dedicated dog walker anymore unless you want to go super fast, but you don't get enough energy in the game for that to matter. So I guess if you're like a super whale, then Arby Village is very good because you have unlimited energy, but for the most part, like, he's just not used anymore. Definitely needs a buff. I think he needs just more damage on his S3, whether it be exclusive equipment. He needs just something else. Maybe when he revives, he gets a barrier as well. I don't know. He just seems very weak. He's either just very squishy and does nothing, or if he does get his S3 off, it just does no damage. So hopefully he gets a buff. Now let's talk about Judge Kisei, otherwise known as Juggs. If you guys don't know why she's called Juggs, you can ask in the comments to someone. I don't really want to explain that, but yeah, Juggs is just not that good anymore. She used to be the best cleaver in the game a long time ago when you paired her with like A-Lots. She was very good. You just boost her up, use your S2 or your S3 soul burn into your S2 because A-Lots holds Tog Hells and you just win. Pretty much that was the entire combo. You just A-Lots in the Judge Kisei and win. But now she's just not really good anymore. So she has a ton of AoE damage. She has that skill cooldown increase. She has S2, which does a ton of damage, and her S1, which does decent damage as well. The only thing is, like, just look at her skills. Like, you can tell if a unit's bad, guys, if you just look at their skills and look how much text they have. Like, this unit, S1 and S2, it's 2 lines of text. That means she's terrible. So she really needs a buff. And then her S3, although it's very good, it's just not enough damage nowadays, right? And also, if you actually look at her stats, she is not decent enough to even like speed contest because Smaugit tried to push her to a speed contest role because of her S3 skill cooldown increasing, and you could just build her fast and reset the cooldown of something. But yeah, that means she needs to be super fast, she needs effectiveness, and she still wants damage because all of her skills do damage. I think the best way to make her better is do something like that they did with Blue Kisei, right? Like give her like a stealth on her S3 or something, or like I don't even care about the skill Nully, like it doesn't matter because she's so squishy. Give her like stealth and barrier and she'd be just infinitely better. Maybe still not used honestly, but way better than just the skill Nully. Just kind of leaves her out there, able to be CC, targeted and stuff like that. So I think that's a good change they should have. Like right now she's not used anywhere at all, right? PvE, she's terrible. You might as well bring a different unit because only thing you get out of her in PvE is her defense break on her S1. It's only 50% chance. You have a ton more units that can defense break way better, right? So not really worth using her. And in PvP, yeah, people will use her in Cleave if you want, in like lower arena. But yeah, she gets countered very hard by counter units. Like her S3 and S2 don't have like unable to be countered, which makes no sense. They should definitely add that as well. Don't know why that's not a thing. They can even add like, you know, 50% increased crit chance, or even like hit chance on her S3 or S2 to make her a better cleaver, so that she can deal with like ML Landies or like evasion units. But right now she's just useless. She can get countered. She can miss very easily against like Aidens and stuff like that. She can also just die right off the bat, and yeah, she can get anti-critted. So yeah, not really good. Definitely needs a buff. She's very outdated. Hopefully she gets changed because yeah, she's pretty fucking useless right now. Next we have Specimen Says. So this unit is one of my favorite units, otherwise known as Spez. He's just very reliant on stuns, and basically just run him in a stun comp and he can just one-shot with his S3 and reset the cooldown because it will one-shot stun targets for sure. And some people like to run him on like a counter bruiser build because if you see if your S3 is available when an ally except for the caster's attack, you have a chance to counter, and his S2 has an AoE counter, or not AoE counter, AoE stun, and then his S1 has a built-in stun, right? So you can see like, you know, if you build him on a bruiser build and he counters, he can stun with his S1, and then you can S3 right after in one shot. The only thing is if you do it like that, he is super stat hungry. So he's a thief, so innately he's very squishy. So if you want to build him on the bruiser build, even though actually doesn't have damage like mitigation built in, if you want to build him on the bruiser build, like you're gonna be sacrificing a ton of damage for bulk, and that means that, you know, you won't be able to, you'll still be able to one shot with his S3 on like squishy targets, but against very tanky targets it's kind of sus. And you also have to build him with effectiveness if you want to do that, because you want him to be able to reliably land his own stuns. So if you look at the stats that he needs, then he needs defense, he needs health, he needs attack because he wants to kill things, right? That's kind of the point of his kit, not just to, you know, stun stuff. And then you need speed so you can take turns, right? You also need crit chance, crit damage, and effectiveness. So you basically need everything but effect resist, and thieves have low base stats in terms of bulk. So he's just super hard to build. And yeah, it's just hard to build him. I think you need something like built-in crit chance, something like Ravi. Like APOC Ravi requires so many stats. She requires less than Spez, right? APOC Ravi only needs defense, health, speed, and crit, whereas Spez needs that plus attack and effectiveness. So I don't know why they don't give him like built-in crit chance, built-in effectiveness, like just a passive effectiveness boost, or like maybe damage mitigation in his S3 when it's like off cooldown, right? Like, I don't know, like 10%, 20%, like, I don't know. But he's just way too hard to build. Like, he doesn't even have stealth without the help of an artifact. So most people will run him on an artifact known as Wind Rider. And because you're using Wind Rider, because you want that stealth when you kill something with your S3, until you actually kill something, you're kind of just sitting there and able to die and get one-shots. So yeah, there's a ton of problems. He just needs something else in his kit for sure. Definitely fun to use in PvP in certain comps, but it's very hard to use him. He's very commonly paired with like stun units. Like you can even use him with like SC Airwell, but because of the fact that he's so easy to kill and doesn't have like built-in survivability, and he just requires so many stats, he's just hard to play. Next we have another light thief in Twisted Eidolon Kayron, which is kind of funny because he's one of the newer units in this list, probably the newest one by far. All the other ones are very, very old. This one is new, and he got buffed actually, and he's still pretty awful. So basically his entire mechanic is you're just waiting to stack 100 Fighting Spirit, US3, and then you quote-unquote one-shot everything. And you can see he has counterattack built in, and he also has this like AoE attack in his S1 and a barrier. And similar problem to Specimen says, he's a thief, so he's very squishy, so it's hard to build him very bulky. And because you want him to be surviving, because his entire mechanic is just surviving in long fights, counterattacking, stacking up his fighting spirit, he's pretty hard to build. Now he does actually have damage suffered by 30%, or is decreased by 30% when he gets crit, which is kind of what Specimen says needs, so nice. But the thing is, he's still very hard to build. Like you can see, this is the biggest problem with Spez. Even though Twisted Eidolon Kayron has this damage reduction built in, he still feels very squishy. And because Twisted Eidolon Kayron wants to survive, you need high defense, high health. You want some speed so you can cycle to his S3, although it's not really needed. You need attack, you need critical hit chance, you need critical damage. So you need basically everything similar to Spez, but instead of effectiveness, you want effect resist, because you don't want your counter attacking stance to get stripped, because if you do get it stripped off you or dispelled off you, he just kind of sits there and will die because he's not that tanky. So because of that, yeah, you're pretty stuck with his build, right? You need a lot of stats, very high investment, similar to Spez. I think thieves in this game just generally have a weakness where if they don't actually get a lot of like stats from their abilities passively, they are just not usable as bruisers, unless they have like evasion, like Remnant Violet and Aiden, because evasion is just like, you know, kind of just RNG, because they just require way too many stats. Like building thieves as bruisers is just like super, super hard unless you have invasion. Like if we think about the good thief bruisers out there, we have like Aiden, right? I'm not going to show you guys because it's just going to take forever to find. We have like Savior Aiden, we have Remnant Violet, we have Green Violet, right? Even like Milim, and they all have evasion. So that's like what they kind of need. Maybe, I'm not saying give him evasion, that'd be kind of much, but I think he needs like a stat boost, like maybe 30% crit chance, something like that, and then he'd be pretty decent. Like right now, he's kind of usable because you can use his S3 before it's stacked to do some damage, but yeah, his damage is just not there for how much stat investment you need into him. If you build him full damage, the thing is like he's just gonna die or get his counterattack stripped. So pretty hard to build him, very hard to use. I have him, tried to use him, just not good, so I'm very sad. Hopefully they do buff him though, because his animations look amazing, and I think they need to do that by giving him some stats, because they already tried like allowing it so you can spam his S3 a bit more, but it's not really worth it. And honestly, even if you actually get this full Fighting Spirit S3 off, you don't one-shot everything like ML Landy does, and even when ML Landy doesn't one-shot, she has like a stun. So yeah, Twisted Eidolon Kayron is just not that good. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this list though, guys. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys have any other units that you think need to be buffed, let me know down below. And if any units are on this list that you love using and you don't see a reason why they should be buffed, also let me know down below.